You know what one of the best feelings in the world is as a fantasy basketball manager? Is negotiating trades. You send an offer, they decline, they counter, you decline. You go back and forth for hours, sometimes days, until finally the trade is accepted. Your trade partner is happy, you're happy, and then it goes up for review, and your league, because you guys have league vetoes in place, they veto your trade. After all of those days, hours of negotiating, nothing. You get no deal, and then there's an uproar in your group chat. People are like, oh, that's not fair. It's collusion, blah, 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 blah. But you know your team, and you know what you want for your team. In this episode, we're going to unpack that uncomfortable conversation of league vetoes when it comes to trades and let you know what the experts think and how you should approach it moving forward in fantasy basketball. We believe every NBA fan that plays fantasy football should also play fantasy basketball. This is a question that we get all the time. Robin, should we veto this trade? Typically, my answer is always no. You should not veto the trade. However, there are some exceptions. Sometimes people send offers that are wild, y'all. Sometimes you'll see somebody like, hey man, go ahead and send me Karl Anthony Towns. While you're at it, send me Jalen Brunson. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to send you Bobby Crazy Eyes Portis. Huh? Where they do that at? That is clear collusion. However, sometimes we see deals where it's like, hey man, send me that Karl Anthony Towns and also send me Mikal Bridges. On the other side, I'm going to give you LaMelo Ball. I think that's a fair trade, but somebody in your league might say, hey, y'all should just do Cat for LaMelo straight up. But you know what? Here's the news. Here's the big news. It ain't your business. It ain't your call. Two grown fantasy basketball managers who are competing, right? They're clearly not, tanking their teams. They're clearly not colluding with their partner to split the winnings. If they have a deal that you don't like, that's not so much that it's collusion. That's jealousy, my guy. It smells like jealousy. You mad because you ain't get the deal. That's what it really boils down to. Now, I know what you're thinking. Robin, oh my God, you think you know everything, man. You can't tell us. We know that we need to have a league veto policy in our league because it is democracy. Come on, ma. Where they do that at? Come on, man. League trades being upheld should be in the hands of the league commissioner. It should be a dictatorship. A Grady dictatorship is what it should be, right? But you're like, Rob, what gives you the authority? If you didn't know, I did spend a little bit of time as a fantasy analyst for NBC Sports. I also used to be a dynasty ranker for #basketball.com, one of my favorite websites for NBA fantasy basketball content. But I'm not alone here. I ended up reaching out to the fantasy basketball community, and not just players, but analysts, some of your favorite analysts. We have this group chat on Twitter. I'm so grateful to be there. I get so much information, knowledge. We support each other, but also just talk fantasy basketball with expert opinions. And I asked them, what's your take on fantasy basketball trade vetoes? And honestly, we could even take this beyond. This is not just for fantasy basketball. This is just for fantasy. When it comes to trades, the experts have spoken, and I'm going to share that with you. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, and college basketball, NHL to UFC. Head to BetOnline today and don't forget to use promo code BELIEVE for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. So the first expert I want to share is definitely a spicy one. This is from the GOAT, my man Josh Lloyd from the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. He's a friend of the show. We've been on his show a couple of times, and we're really grateful for him and everything he does for the community. But this is his first quote. He has a couple, but this one, he's coming in hot. He's coming in spicy. So when asked about fantasy basketball trade vetoes, this is what Josh says. He says, quote me, "Vetoes can get effed." He didn't say effed. "And they are for whiny, soft cocks." You can't write this stuff. Actually, he can. So he came in hot. He definitely, this struck a chord there. Mr. Lloyd, my guy, you know, he came in really hot. He came in really hot on that one. But again, it's understandable because it's something that we face so much in the community, especially for new managers. Just because there's a feature available for you doesn't mean you need to use it. I've seen in some leagues that I'm in, people form like little sections or cliques of managers where like, hey, all four of us, if so-and-so puts a trade in, let's all veto it, no matter what it is. And like, come on, man, we can't be in that world. We can't be in that world. The next one also comes from Josh Lloyd. I wanted to follow up because that first one was so spicy. This is another take from Josh. In the same thread, he says, "Just in case there are confusions, vetoes suck. Never league votes, and the commish never makes a value decision on it if it's fair or unbalanced. Collusion, heating, poor sportsmanship gets vetoed." So what Josh is saying here is that only the commissioner should be able to veto, and the only time he should veto is when it's clear collusion. Guys, we are all mature, like, you know, we're grown-ups, right? You're a grown-up, my guy. You know if it's collusion. You know if it smells fishy. If it's debatable and you're kind of on the fence, you got to just push it through because especially in a category league, folks know what their team needs. So a player who is valuable because of what they bring to the table with blocks and a manager who's trying to dominate the blocks category, it makes sense for him to maybe give a little more to get that player because that player is valued higher. In points leagues, it's the same thing. It's like a preference play. It's like, what do I want? It might not be categories. It might be depth. It might be like, hey, like I'm down to give these three I'm down to give the Joker up to get these three mid-level players because I need some depth. If you love this community and want to invest in what we are building, please consider becoming a paid subscriber. Think about it like treating me to a coffee and bagel once a month. Becoming a paid subscriber will grant you access to our MVP Discord channel, priority DM and email replies, and priority Rate My Team videos on TikTok. And most importantly, your support will help us to keep creating content. You are not obligated or expected to pay anything to be a part of this community, but we do have expenses associated with running this operation, and your support will help us keep this thing going for years to come. To get started, visit BelieveInFantasy.com, enter your email, and select the level of support that works best for you. This one is from Poppy Roy. He says, "Unless there is an obvious evidence of collusion or if there is no obvious benefit from one party, then no trades should be vetoed. To some extent, the quality of trades in your league says a lot about your competition. As a commissioner, I rarely veto trades. As a league voter, of course, I veto trades out spite I love that take. And for me, again, if you have league vetoes in your league, it is what it is. I don't recommend it. I recommend that the only person that should be able to veto a trade is the commissioner. Whoa, wait. This is super important. We need you to be a two-way player. What does that mean? On offense, we need you to watch, comment, and like on the YouTube version of this episode. But on defense, we need you to listen to the audio podcast. You have no idea. That is a way you can support our channel absolutely free. So make sure that you're playing defense and offense, listening to the podcast and watching the podcast. We appreciate your support. Next up, we have Sloan Piva. He says, "Vetoes are garbage. If it's a big money, super competitive league, let dudes manage their team and make acquisitions the way they see fit. If it's a league with amateurs, who the F is an amateur to tell another amateur what's fair and what's not fair? Why should someone else's evaluation of players end a trade that two other managers want to carry out? And why allow emotions to creep into a league? The majority of vetoes I used to see is when my leagues used to allow them were out of jealousy or revenge against a manager that vetoed a prior trade. It's garbage. Hot dog water. Be a good commissioner. Don't have shit teams and trash managers in your league, and never allow league vetoes. It makes people not want to trade, which is also awful. Thank you so much for that, Sloan. That is dope. That's dope. Let's keep it going. Next up, we got Matt Smith. Matt Smith says, I'm convinced people veto trades most of the time, not because they are unfair, but because they are pissed that they missed out on trading for whoever is the best player in the deal. And he shared that actually a tweet back in 2023. Next up, we got Scott Keller. Scott Keller says, so I kind of feel like Natalie Imbruglia, I'm a little torn. One fantasy manager's rubbish is another fantasy manager's treasure. An outsider can never truly understand the value of a trade, as it's all in the eye of the beholder. However, people are scummy. Wow, he went there. And collusion can occur, and something or some rule should be put in place and agreed upon to safeguard the integrity of the league. I love that one. And the last one is from the NBA Fantasy Bible. He says, league votes is poop. Jealousy is a curse. So in conclusion, I would recommend that you do not allow league votes for vetoes, that you give that power to the fantasy basketball commissioner of your league and allow him to make the decision whether or not a trade should be approved. Now, I want to make sure we hear from you. Let me know in the comments. Do you think that fantasy basketball leagues should have league vetoes? And if so, why? And if you have any horror stories you want to share about the league veto process in your fantasy basketball league, we'd love to hear that as well. Wait. Before you go, quick question. Do you guys want more content that is surrounding fantasy basketball concepts like this? Really curious to know, because we're trying to experiment with some new episode types. Don't forget, play the waivers, set your lineup, and believe in fantasy.